What's up, what's up? Welcome back, my Mayhem friends. Okay, welcome to the teaching portion of the night. I am pumped that you're here, and I am excited to do week 2. So, if you haven't been here new tonight, we are doing a series, and we're in the second week of our series. So, if you don't already yet have one of these sweet-looking journals right here, grab one and you can join in along. I'm doing it too. Like, see, my name's right there, Chris Barnes. I'm doing it along too, and it is actually personally really exciting for me because I'm learning new things and it's invigorating. Like, it's exciting, and I'm excited that I'm not the only one. You know, like there's 25 leaders at Mayhem who are on the journey with us. And I know that there's 20 some of you who are connected in the Bible reading groups. And so there's like close to 50 of us who are on this journey together. Like, that is amazing to think about, that we are on this journey trying to hear God's voice in these stories together. Man, I am pumped to personally be going through it and to know that so many of us, close to 50 of us, are doing this journey together. And if you're not doing it yet, and at some point in the evening you're like, man, I think I'm going to start reading. I think I want to do it. There's more journals. Grab one and just start reading away. Grab a book and start reading. It'll tell you what to do, and ask a leader if you have questions. Okay, here's the ultimate goal of what we're doing together. We want you guys to be able to know how to read this book, learn it, understand it, and be able to just sit down on your own and be able to start navigating this book. Okay, here is a key skill to develop when you're reading the Bible for yourself and on your own and learning how to read and understand it. So, when you're reading it for yourself, there's going to be questions that pop into your head. An important first step to do is learn how to let this biblical story shape your ideas and not the other way around. Because here's the deal. You and me and everyone comes to this book and this story with a previous understanding of who God is, what God is like, who I am, who the other humans are. We all come with ideas to the story. And sometimes we put those stories into the thing that we're reading, and we miss sometimes what the author is actually telling us. And so here's an important first step. Learn how to let this story shape my ideas and not the other way around. How do I do that? So when a question pops into your head, ask yourself this: what does this story say about that question? What does this story say about that question? How does this story help me answer that question? And it might not answer it fully, but that's okay, because this book was designed to shape us over a lifetime. As we hear God's voice, as we respond and follow Him, it shapes us over a lifetime. We're not going to master this in a month, and that's not the point. Like, we weren't supposed to have all of our questions answered. And the big questions of God and life and meaning and all of those things that we are going to wrestle with, like, it's not going to be tied up in a bow at the end of tonight or at the end of this semester. Like, it doesn't work like that. But there are specific things that these biblical authors and God, through those authors, want to say to you and me. And so over time, to let this story shape our understanding of how everything works and who God is and what He is like, is to ask, what does this story say to my question? What does this story that I'm reading say about the question that I have? Okay, Okay, as we turn the corner and think about the story that we're going to jump into tonight, I want to make sure we're all on the same page and remember where we've been and the story that has happened so far. So last week, we journeyed through the first 3 chapters of this story. And so what is the basic story of Genesis 1, 2, and 3?
Well, it begins by introducing us to a beautiful mind, the author of all reality, a being called God. And he has the power to take the dark chaos of the uncreated world and bring about order and beauty and a garden full of life.
And to crown this accomplishment, God appoints these creatures called humanity,
Or in Hebrew, Adam.
and they're made as God's image.
Which means that they're commissioned to rule this beautiful world on God's behalf by harnessing all of its potential and creating even more beauty and order.
This is a story about humans using their power to do meaningful, life-giving work. But the question is, how?
Yeah, humanity now faces a choice that's represented by a fruit tree. So humans could partner with God and find freedom by trusting in his knowledge of good and evil.
Or
They could seize power and define good and evil on their own, which, God warns, will kill them.
and they hear the voice of a dark, mysterious creature that tells them the choice is simple. Take the fruit. It'll give you power and freedom to rule the world on your own terms.
And so they seize this knowledge, and as a result, they become suspicious and self-protective. It leads to fractured relationships, violent power grabs, and ultimately, a whole civilization, Babylon, that has redefined evil as good.
And then the story that we're going to jump into happens in Genesis 11. So there's a few stories in between Genesis 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So what happens in between that story and the story that we're really going to dive into tonight and look at and track our pattern of God giving a home and blessing humans, and then humans rejecting God's blessing and instruction and experiencing the consequences of their rebellion against him. And then humans are banished. And then God doesn't leave them in their banishment and the consequences of their sin and gives them hope. We're going to track that again through the story tonight. But let's look at the stories in between there and here, and then we'll jump in.
From here, the story then spirals downward. Chapters 3 through 11, they trace the widening ripple effect of the rebellion and of human relationships fracturing at every level. So there's a story about 2 brothers, Cain and Abel. Cain's so jealous of his brother that he wants to murder him. And God warns him not to give in to the temptation, but he does anyway. He murders him in the field. So Cain then goes on to build a city where violence and oppression reign. And this is all epitomized in the story of Lamech. He's the first man in the Bible to have more than one wife. He's accumulating them like property. And then he goes on to sing a short song about how he's more violent and vengeful than Cain ever was. After this, we get an odd story about the sons of God, which could refer to evil angelic beings, or it could refer to ancient kings who claimed that they descended from the gods. And like Lamech, they acquire as many wives as they wanted, and they produce the Nephilim, these great warriors of old. Whichever view is right, the point is that humans are building kingdoms that fill God's world with violence and even more corruption. In response, we're told that God is broken with grief. Humanity is ruining his good world, and they're ruining each other. And so out of a passion to protect the goodness of his world, he washes it clean of humanity's evil with a great flood. But he protects one blameless human, Noah, and his family, and he commissions him as a new Adam. He repeats the divine blessing and commissions him to go out into the world. And so our hopes are really high, but then Noah fails too, and also in a garden. He goes and he plants a vineyard, and he gets drunk out of his mind. And then one of his sons, Ham, does something shameful to his father in the tent. And so here we have our new Adam, naked and ashamed, just like the first, and the downward spiral begins again. It all leads to the foundation of the city of Babylon. The people of ancient Mesopotamia, they come together around this new technology they have, the brick. And they can make cities and towers bigger and faster than anybody's ever done before. And they want to build a new kind of tower that will reach up to the gods, and they will make a great name for themselves. It's an image of human rebellion and arrogance. It's the garden rebellion now writ large. And so God humbles their pride and scatters them.
Okay, welcome to one of my favorite parts of the teaching, the text part, where I get to show you what the authors are doing in the way that they are telling their story and make really cool connections. You'll see these boxes. This is like Genesis 1, Genesis 6. This is for easier reference to jump backwards in the story, to be able to show you how this author is telling this story with the previous stories in mind in very specific ways. So let's jump into this story. Now, the whole world had one language and same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. Okay, a group of people moving, and they find a home and they settle there. Okay, cool, right on. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Okay, interesting. Do you see what's happening here? The author is like, hey, they made bricks instead of stone. Previously, they had stone to make structures and build with and create a society. And they were like, whoa, look at what we have here in our new home. Check that out. If we put this together and we burn them thoroughly, we can make bricks. And what is fascinating is that this is part of the original blessing that God made humans to do. Way back over here, God was like, fill the earth and subdue it. Now, we really don't understand that word. It's okay. I didn't understand it before I started looking it up. To think of a farmer in a field. A farmer looks at a field and the potential of that field, that would just be weeds and flowers and grass left to itself. And it's like, the farmer's like, man, I think that field can produce food for lots of people. And so the farmer plows it, seeds it, waters it, and it produces a lot of stuff because that farmer harnessed the potential. That's exactly what these guys are doing. That's cool. Right on. They're creating new technology out of the potential of their new home. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. Okay, this is important to notice. This is heaven plural. These people are not saying, I want to get to heaven and overtake God and get back to where God is. That's not what they're trying to do. They just made some new technology and they're like, look how big of a tower that we can create. We can create really big things. It goes way up into the sky. Sometimes they would use heavens like we use sky. That's not the thing that they did wrong. The author is about to tell us two things of how they organize themselves directly against God. And those people said, let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the earth. Let us make a name for ourselves. Humans were designed to make a name for God. They were supposed to image him and rule the world like he would. And if they ruled the world like he would, they would make a name for God and image him and reflect how amazing and good he is. They said, no, we want to make a name for ourselves because we think we are great. Look at the tower that we just built. I mean, come on, we're pretty good. And they don't want to be dispersed. God's original blessing was to fill the earth. So they have set themselves up in two very specific ways against God's design and instruction and intention. Then God comes down to see the city and the tower that they have built. This is not the first time God comes down to see. There's one positive way at the beginning of the story, Genesis 1. God said, "Let there be light." There was light, and God saw that the light was good. So he commanded, the light obeyed, and God saw that it was good. He's presented as this one who knows the difference between good and not good. And if you read Genesis 1 and notice this is a pattern that repeats itself in the 6 days of creation. God creates something and he sees that it's good. Now in Genesis 6, this is the flood part of the story. The Lord saw. He comes down to these people in this part of the story. And this is what he sees. The wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intention of the thoughts of the hearts only evil continually. He comes down and sees here, and humans who set themselves up in rebellion, this is what happens. There's only evil, only death, only destruction, and that is what is filling the earth. And now it's important, something just to notice here, of the authors sometimes give us the emotion of God and how God feels and what he's thinking and what he's feeling. And if you had in your mind that God was angry in the flood story, he's actually heartbroken. He regrets that he made man, and it grieved him to his heart. Even through Genesis 12, God has not become angry yet. God is not angry once in the story between Genesis 1 and 12. It is later on in the story where God becomes angry. But it's important to start reading and noticing what the author is specifically telling us about God and how he feels and what he's thinking and what he's doing. And so God comes to these people who just set themselves up against him and built a really cool big tower. And he sees what they're doing. And he says, "Behold, they are only one people. They have one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. Nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down there, confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech." God is not afraid that they're going to become too powerful and overthrow him. He's not afraid that they're going to build a big enough tower and have the technology to get to heaven. He sees that these people have set themselves up directly against him, and he knows the result. And he says that what he's concerned about is them becoming greatly terrible. He has seen what happens to humans when they're just left to run their societies against how he has designed it and then designed this world to be. So, for their good, for the good of everyone, the Lord disperses them over the face of the earth. It's interesting. His purpose still happens, even though people rebel against him. And they stopped building the city. Because therefore, the name was called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of all the earth. What's the result in the life that humans now live because of their rebellion? They were united in speech and united and had unity at the beginning of the story. And because of their rebellion, now there's confusion of communication and languages. Every time humans rebel in this story, life gets worse, and they are banished further, and they continually make life harder for themselves and other people. And we get to this point in the story, and we're like, is there hope for humans to live in God's blessing and the original intention? And God comes and chooses one. He chooses one so that his promises and blessings might flow through to everyone. So the Lord said, "Go from your country and your kindred to your father's house, to the land that I will show you." Here's a promised home. God is like, Abraham, listen to me. I'll show you a home. I want to give you a home to have the blessings flow through you to everyone. It's interesting here The Lord said, so Abraham went. Is the same rhythm from Genesis 1. God said, there was light, and it was good. God said, the light obeyed, a good result. It was good. The Lord said, go. Abraham went. And you're thinking, okay, sweet. The last thing I want to show you, why did God choose Abraham, one family? Verse 2 of 12, God said, I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. God is going to choose and elevate this one family. So that means for the purpose of. Why? Because so that he will be a blessing. God wants to bless in you all the families of the earth. All the families of the earth shall be blessed. God chooses this one family, not so they could elevate themselves, not so they could think themselves better than anybody else, not because they were more special, not because he was choosing this one family at the exclusion of other families. No, he chose this one family for all of the families of the earth to be blessed. It's an important idea to see, remember, think about. This was fun to be with you. Hope you saw some things of how the author is making connections and how it builds and helps us understand the story and what is happening and how to understand the meaning of the story. Have fun in your groups. Peace!